Well, what do you think? What do you think? Pretty amazing, huh? That's a trip. So, okay, what story should I tell now? We're waiting for Gina Rene to get up. What's going on there? Okay, this is cool. So, let's see. Food Not Bombs. So one time I was down, I was asked by this woman named Cindy Sheehan to bring food to Camp Casey in Crawford, Texas. And so I used to live in a school bus, and I did actually have a little tiny adobe house I could use the bathroom for in Tucson, Arizona. So I drove all the way with a bunch of other activists over to Crawford. So we're feeding people there. And it turns out the lawyers for Cindy were from New Orleans, and they say, oh my God, their parents called and said there's a hurricane coming towards New Orleans called Katrina. So back then you didn't have all the Wi-Fi stuff we got now. And Veterans for Peace had a bus with a satellite hookup so you could go online. And so I made a web page called foodnotbombs.net Katrina.html and urged everyone to go help with the relief effort. And this is like basically 3 days before the hurricane even hit. And so to my surprise, the word got out and people were really mobilizing. So the first group to get down towards New Orleans was from Hartford, Connecticut. And Dan goes, hey, we got to this military checkpoint and they wouldn't let us through. I say they need a letter of permission. No problem. So I designed some letterhead, wrote a letter, and signed it. And said, hey, I'm going to send a PDF to everybody, and I'm going to also upload that PDF on the Food Not Bombs website and the Food Not Bombs Katrina page, and everyone can just download this letter of permission. So sure enough, Dan prints it out, puts it in his bus. They get to the military checkpoint, and they goes, we got our letter of permission signed by Keith McHenry, and the military goes, okay, sounds good, and they let us in. So we were down there for 8 months. And we were the only daily food working with Malik, who had, what is this thing called? Common Grounds. And it was like this unbelievable, amazing thing to be feeding people where the government just completely neglected them. And then a real crazy thing was this young man calls me and he goes, hey Keith, we tried to land in our boats. We came from Texas in a huge boat full of food, and we tried to get on the levees, but we couldn't do it. We ran out of ammunition after 6 hours because the National Guard actually just seemed to have unlimited firepower. So we turned back, but we tried. And I said, well, don't worry about that. We'll send a truck over to where your food is and we'll drive it in safely to New Orleans. But that's pretty insane that somebody would try to land a boat in a levee in New Orleans and end up in a 6-hour firefight with the National Guard. But anyway, so these things happen in Food Not Bombs. So I decided to visit Nigeria Food Not Bombs. I visited them a few times. So we're doing this massive tour all around the country. I've got like maybe 10 Food Not Bombs volunteers in this van that I bought it was a stolen vehicle from Denmark, but I'm in Nigeria, so I'm not going to turn them in. And so I think I got the van for $7,000. And so we were going around and we got to meet like the Minister of Transportation of Nigeria, because it turned out he funded a soccer team that the Food Not Bombs kids were in as well. And then we went to Port Harcourt and met with the people that were like in the oil swamps and all that. It was just an amazing experience. And then so on the way back, we were going to go to Abuja, the capital, to visit the Minister of Transportation again at his other mansion in the capital, because we met him at his first mansion in Lagos. And as we were getting there, it turned out there was a massacre. That was when the Danish cartoon riots were happening. And so a bunch of Christians got killed in the Muslim part of Nigeria. And so just before, about a day before we arrive in this town, 100 people are massacred in this intersection. And so we're in this intersection that's smoldering, it's all gray, there's like people that didn't make it. And so all of a sudden these like area boys start demanding we give them money and stuff. And my driver and my other Funa Bombs kids are like, we're not giving them any money. So they were able to get the key out of the ignition of the van and then kidnap me and this filmmaker, Liz Tadich, and drive us into the craziest place I've ever been in Nigeria. It was insane. And so they're demanding $25 million, $25 million. And I'm like, they might pay you $25 million to keep me here, but they're not going to pay me $25 million to get rid of me. And so then these people that are claiming to be state police maybe with automatic weapons, they run up and I end up negotiating with them. And my friend, the Funa Bombs kids brought these guys with whatever they had, that's AR-15s or whatever. And then, and so I'm like going, I'll give you 400 naira, which is $40, to the guys with the guns. I'm trying to give I'm trying to buy the key back from one of the kidnappers for 200 naira, which I think was $20. And eventually I negotiate that, I get the key, I leave with the guys with the guns. And when we get out of town and cross the Niger, I think the Niger River, and we get out of safety, we like all lay on the ground afterwards, like, oh my God. So then we go, do we have a band behind us yet? No. When I speak, I don't know what's going on. So anyway, so then we're going through the jungle, it's all exciting. We lived through the kidnapping. I was only held for like, an hour or something like that in a big argument. And then there's a roadblock, like there can be, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to get kidnapped a second time in one day. So I jump out with my Funa Bombs flyers, and I run up to the guys, and I say, we were on TV, we're on our way to Abuja. You've seen us on TV, and we actually had been on TV, but there was no TV where these people were. There was no electricity where these people were. So they go, oh, this is great, and I give them flyers, and they move the roadblock, and then we get to this guy's mansion. And he said, man, you guys need more money. And he'd actually donated real Nigerian money to us when we visited him in Lagos. And this time he goes, he said, you're gonna meet with the Secretary of Agriculture for Nigeria, which we did, and then we went to her office the next day. But the weirdest thing is he said, here, I'm gonna give you $1,000, and he prints the $1,000 on a color Xerox machine in his office, and it worked perfectly. And so we went all over Nigeria with like Xerox $100 bills, and you can get a lot with a Xerox $100 bill in Nigeria. So anyway, and then we were hanging out at internet cafes with people doing the internet. All the scams you see online where you got to give money to King Sunny, whoever it is. We're sitting there with them, and they're typing as fast as they can, they're buying like electronics from using credit cards from Pennsylvania and having them shipped to someplace in Ohio. And I was like, and I'm in the capital of Nigeria watching that happen, trying to do my own email. So there's been some fun things like that. Now another story I really like, looks like we got some time for stories. So anyway, I get asked to speak at Food Fight in Northampton, England. And I figure out, this friend of mine says, the cheapest way to get to England from the United States is get a plane, and I guess I was somewhere around here, to get a flight out of Seattle to Iceland and then Iceland to England. And it turns out, because it's Icelandic Air, you can stay in Iceland as long as you want. And there's no like visas, there's no, it doesn't cost you any more on the flight or anything. So I go and I hang out with the Funa Bombs kids in Reykjavik. And they go, look, this is where we serve every week, and we're serving the food. And they go, yeah, and then, we got to talking about the banking scandal here and the corruption of the government and everything. It's just horrible what they're doing. And then one day, after our meal, we all decide to march to the Parliament building with signs. And then the next week, we do the same thing. And eventually, the march from Funa Bombs gets so big that it overthrows the Icelandic government. And there's a great video of one of the Funa Bombs volunteers climbing up on the Parliament building, removing the Icelandic flag and putting up the equivalent of the 7-Eleven store flag on top of the Capitol building. And it turns out they ended up writing a new, not Food Not Bombs, but the people of Iceland wrote a new constitution, and they put 36 of those bankers in prison. We didn't put anybody in prison for stealing all this money over here. And in fact, we had Occupy because Obama decided to bail out the banks and leave the 5,500,000 homeowners to just, lose their houses and go into debt. So fortunately, when there was, I was down in Orlando. We ready? Almost ready. So I was in Orlando. We heard that Orlando Food Not Bombs is going to get arrested, that we lost our federal lawsuit appeal. So I go to hang out with Orlando Food Not Bombs and get arrested. In San Francisco, I only did 500 days in jail for feeding people, faced 25 to life in prison, was tortured 3 times, as Eagle had mentioned. And so anyway, there I ended up getting arrested twice, and the second time I did 18 days in Orlando jail. And what was amazing there was we outlast even the Orlando city government. They had to give up. The Libertarian Party decided to have their convention at Lake Eola Park where we're serving food, and they signed up 400 people to get arrested serving food in Orlando. So they gave up, and we didn't even know about this till after it happened. But the odd thing was a friend of mine, Liz Tadich, who was kidnapped with me in Nigeria, and who was with me in Palestine, and who was with me in Poland, and who was with me in like all of the world basically, doing a documentary that has never happened. Anyway, she got a release from the mayor, Buddy Dyer. She was caught in the movie at that time, Food Terrorist. So then Buddy's on the TV going, "These people are food terrorists, we have to stop them." And then sadly for Buddy, he ended up with a real terrorist attack at the Pulse dance club like maybe 10 years later. So compared to vegan meals at Lake Eola Park or some guy shooting up a dance club, you gotta wonder what's up with that. So, you guys ready? Oh. Okay, Gina's ready. So let's go. Woo! More music. Well, sorry, too early, but we are gonna have more music soon. Okay, that's what you're here for, not to hear me tell old stories about Food Not Bombs. But I always have too many stories. I can't remember one right now. Anybody got a question? I'm going to tell you maybe it's new people here. I'm going to say the founding story. So anyway, I was a produce worker in Boston at Redden Circus, and I felt bad. I was throwing out wilted produce every morning, so I started taking it to the housing projects a few blocks away. And it turns out that the people that I was giving the food to, they mentioned, hey, they just opened this new building across the street. It's where they're designing nuclear weapons. And then that's where I got the name Food Not Bombs from, because I thought that was just crazy, that people are struggling because the housing authority won't fix their plumbing. Are we going? Okay, yeah. And so anyway, that's how we got the name Food Not Bombs. And I'll tell you more stories later. Woo-hoo! Thank you.
What's up, Santa Cruz? I'm Gina Rene, and this is $1,000,007. We were here with you last year. I'm excited to share that we wrote a song called Food Not Bombs in honor of the work and the importance of, focusing on human needs and this organization and Keith and all this work. And really it feels like a call to everyone to remember that. So we'll be playing that in just a sec. How you feeling? First, we're gonna share this one in honor of an elder, one of the reggae greats, Bob Andy. It's called Feeling Soul.